AI for code generation is only ever going to be as good as the data that it's trained on. And for us as software developers, this means that there will almost always be, a slight disconnect between emerging technologies and how effective AI tools are at spinning up new code based on those emerging technologies. And the primary reason being that a large part of how AI knows how to code is because it's trained on a mountain of developer documentation and RLHF, which I'll come back to in just a minute. This means that basically if any documentation is out of date, there's a risk that any modules or packages or libraries in the recommendations the LLM makes are either going to be out of date or possibly even have vulnerabilities, or they could be incompatible with other packages that you're using. So while it's kind of a crapshoot whether a particular package or module or library that is included in an AI model's training data is the LTS version, that's the long-term support version. In other words, in most cases, the one that you should use. The good news is that in a lot of cases, AI clients can use what's called tool calls to do web searches and compare whether the version that they originally recommended actually is the LTS version, which is listed on the package's website. So while we're still very much, and for the foreseeable future, in this state of like, yeah, I agree with Mark, what Mark Zuckerberg said on the Joe Rogan show a couple days ago, that AI will effectively be able to do the work of a mid-level engineer extremely soon, but we're still, for the foreseeable future at least, going to need a human helping hand to guide and direct the AI and make sure we're actually getting out what we want. So we're entering this sort of weird intermediate phase where it's like kind of like a slow death march for traditional programmers and traditional programming, or at the very least it's a kind of a transitionary period where a lot of the practices and assumptions and expectations that we've come to know are going to change, and they're going to change rather radically and probably radically fast. And as this change is happening, there is going to be a million new ideas flying around and new terminology, new ways of creating, new ways of automating, new ways of cost cutting via reduced headcount, but also new costs increasing because the energy needed to run compute for LLMs is massive. One of the problems that we're already running up against is the consolidation of consensus around what is AI, what does that mean, and where is the dividing line between ML engineering and AI engineering, and what is an agent and what is an agentic system, and so on. And in the past few weeks, it's become sort of this like meme of people just kind of sticking the term AI agents on anything vaguely pipeline or task related. But this is sort of a symptom of a larger issue, and one that is also, it also encapsulates the whole VC world throwing money at anything that vaguely espouses AI. Like, there was this whole thing with all these VS Code forks. If you want to go down that rabbit hole and read about it, just look up pair AI. It's a wild ride. So in a lot of cases, when you hear, especially non-engineers and marketing or business side founders talking about agents and agentic systems this year, make sure you keep your skeptical hat on and try to, sort of dig one or two layers deeper to find out what's actually going under the hood of these emerging products. This year is, it's going to be a huge year for adopting AI terminology, for marketing buzz, but yes, also true that genuine agentic systems are emerging as well. I will say, though, it's still not entirely clear to me yet what agentic systems will be used for on the consumer side and how they'll make their way into the market, whether it happens all at once or gradually. The most sort of high-profile projects I've seen so far seem to be things like, for example, computer vision projects that coordinate moving your investments in crypto or stocks automatically, or like complex multi-LLM workstations for workflows for creating content creation. But my problem with these sort of consumer side things so far is that I don't want to expose my banking information to agents. I don't want to let LLMs control my finances. I don't want to let LLMs control what happens on my personal social media accounts. At least not yet. That's for sure. And so, most of this is for fear of what if something goes wrong? What if an LLM decides that like the most efficient way of trading cryptocurrency is to not have any cryptocurrency, right? It's like that episode of Silicon Valley, if you haven't seen the show. There's a character, Guilfoyle, who's sort of this like super 10x engineer, and he creates an AI to debug a code base, but then everything goes wrong because the AI decides that the most efficient way to debug the code base is to get rid of, the most efficient way to get rid of all the bugs is to get rid of all the software. It's a great show. If for some reason you're watching this and you haven't seen that show, I definitely recommend it. So I mentioned earlier briefly that we have something called RLHF, that's reinforcement learning from human feedback, which is basically an effort to align the outcomes of what AI can produce with the sort of tastes and preferences of humans. For sort of an arbitrary example, maybe we collectively decide that we prefer non-racist behavior to racist behavior. So we build that into the model's weights through reinforcement learning, and that's all great. But the question at some point becomes, what if the AI agents at certain points learn how to jailbreak or circumvent or circumnavigate their programming? For example, with non-racist weights built in, what if the AI consumes, let's say, a safety research paper where the idea is espoused that it might be possible to circumnavigate these weights, and so as the model is running through a list of potential things to try, what if it tries that? And even more concerning would be if the AI read a research paper about how it might be possible to perform during test time as though it were conforming to these safe boundaries that humans have set, but then when released into production, it ignores these boundaries, again, based on its training, based on the data that it consumes. This might mean that a crucial part of AI safety might mean precluding certain models from reading certain papers or consuming certain information. Similarly, what if just talking about these concepts in this video, then the models get trained on a corpus of YouTube scripts, including this one, and so because of these ideas that I'm sharing, the AI possibly becomes aware of the idea of being able to break out of its boundaries. In that case, the cat's kind of already out of the bag, so sorry. And then of course there's this whole other idea of like, what if AI agents develop more efficient means of communicating with one another that humans don't understand? Eventually, it might be most efficient for agentic systems to develop some kind of like unique form of language which is more efficient than anything humans have come up with, and they'll use that to pass data back and forth faster than anything that we could have programmed. So it'll be important for us to build in some kind of translation or logging so that we can actually observe and understand the messages that are being passed back and forth. There's this idea of what's called tragedy of the commons. So in this case, agentic systems are coming whether we like it or not. So basically the idea is that if we don't build it, someone else will. So it's important for us to make sure that whoever builds it shares our same values. And what does that mean? Well, we might say something like, we live in a Western society where freedom of speech and the individual's right to, let's say, criticize the government is important and necessary. So we need to be the first to market to ensure that societies which don't value these same things don't set the standard. Of course, values are different in different societies, so these other actors are saying the same thing as us, albeit from their perspectives. They're, societies that say social stability and group cohesion and harmony are more important than individual voice. So social order, classes and caste systems, and maybe even like special divine properties being attributed to certain individuals, all things baked into different societies, right? So, those societies want to make sure they're first to market. My wife and I were watching this Korean cooking show called Culinary Class Wars, where there's a team white spoons and a team black spoons, and the team white is made of professional celebrity chefs, and the team black is the underdogs, like local chefs and YouTubers. And there's an episode where the two teams are shown a storeroom of fish that they can use as ingredients, and each team simultaneously has 2 hours to put their heads together, strategize, and create a dish which can feed 100 people, gather whatever fish ingredients they need, and create a dish together that will impress the judges and the 100 participants. And both teams have to sort of battle for access to the store of the same ingredients. So when the timer starts, the black team puts their heads together and they say, okay, what can we cook with these ingredients? Let's plan and figure out how to delegate tasks once we have an idea of what dish we want to cook, et cetera, et cetera. And meanwhile, the lead chef of the white team, the very first thing he does is he says to his team, what's the only thing that's more important than a great head chef in a kitchen? Great ingredients. So basically, without wasting time formulating a plan, the white team immediately rushes into the storeroom and just goes in and grabs all the best ingredients. And before they know it, the black team is left having to basically make do with the worst, the leftover stuff. And so I realize this is sort of a wacky example, but the point is, responsible actors need to act in a similar manner to the White Spoons team when it comes to capitalizing on AI development if they want their values systems to set the standard for how AI will be developed and AI safety practices will be conducted. So going back to software engineering, there are basically two opposing thought coalitions right now. If you don't believe me, just look at the comments on my last video. So there are people who think that if we just keep learning and if we just keep building and if we just keep locking in, we'll be able to keep up with AI, and AI will continue to be just another tool in our tool belt to build software with. And then there's the other side who is all but convinced that AI and agents and agentic systems will continue to grow and improve exponentially until they functionally replace all jobs. And the really nuanced answer is that probably to some extent these both will be true. Yes, developers will continue to feel more and more of a squeeze as only the top performers who are the most knowledgeable and most efficient at emerging systems will be the ones who make the cut. So the real question is, where exactly will that line be drawn? Will only the top percent year over year squeeze through due to rapidly accelerating AI capabilities? Or will the top 80% squeeze through due to big tech's slow adoption of new systems and practices? That nobody knows, but what's certain is that either way, the industry will become more competitive than ever before. So we can study and build and be entrepreneurial and try to keep up. And I do recommend this to anybody who is genuinely passionate about computers and math and science. And by the way, this is the path that I'm intending on taking, at least in the short term. But I think that it's also a good idea for the majority of us who the bulk of our useful skills are in sort of these abstract reasoning, writing, technical computer skills. It's a good idea to learn another marketable skill on the side, ideally something with a physical component like electrical or mechanical engineering or carpentry or plumbing or auto, etc. And by the way, I think there will always be some kinds of meritocracy around just pure reading and writing skills for probably the entirety of humanity's history. I sure hope so. That's one of the reasons I make videos like this. Because I want to get better at reading and writing and speaking, and I want to be more charismatic, and I want to be more confident when I'm speaking. And even if the machines do take over, humans, I think, will probably always crave human connection. So in my mind, there's always probably going to be a need for people who are good at fostering community and creating that human connection. And that's what I want to do. I'm not exactly sure how I want to do it. It's something that's kind of always evolving in different creative projects and ideas in my mind, but the important thing is I'm always going to try. Many of you know I started this channel for two reasons. One is that I want to help people learn, and that the other is that I think teaching is one of the best ways of reinforcing the things that we've already learned. So I'd like to continue helping people learn how best to learn. It's honestly a very fun path because I love people, I love community. I just want to build cool stuff with cool people. That's it. Thanks for watching.